This podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading international professional body which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. My name is Maxine Bell, and I am delighted to introduce you to a new series, A Day in the Life of. These podcast episodes will be released between our longer themed podcast series that you are already used to. We've been interviewing coaches for a while now under the theme A Day in the Life of for our LinkedIn newsletter, and they were so well received we wanted to offer them to a broader audience. The interviews are with real, everyday coaches across the globe from all walks of life who join me to honestly and bravely share their journeys into coaching, how they coach and run their business, what they love and what their challenges are, as well as how they integrate self-care into their practice. It's a real honour to get a sneak peek into their lives, and we hope that listening to their stories will inspire, encourage and assist you, whatever stage of your coaching journey you are on. Hello and welcome back to another edition of our Day in the Life series. And today I'm very excited to have with me the lovely Kate Jenkinson, who I've been getting to know in lots of different ways. One through a series she's been making for the AC, Neurodiversity in the Workplace, which is a fantastic series. And if you haven't listened, I suggest you do. But also through our joint love of poetry.
Absolutely.
And lots of things happening on that front, which I'll let you talk about as we get on. But Kate, would you just like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Maxine, and thank you for being such a supporter of all the different things I get myself into. So I would casually introduce myself as a creative executive coach and a business poet. I run my own business, Next Step HR, and have done for, well, it's been in existence for 10 years, but I really came back into it to focus on development and coaching in the last 5 years. So that's what I do and how I do it, and maybe there's more for us to explore.
Yeah, definitely, because I'm not sure if I'm keen on the word niche, but you have things you're passionate about that you take alongside your coaching, don't you? So
yeah,
you took part, I think, in our Creative Coaching Fest, didn't you?
I did.
Which was great fun.
For me, creativity is something that we all have, and we sometimes forget that it's ours to define and ours to explore. And I've always been curious, so I've never not explored my creativity. It shows up in many different ways. And some of those passions and niches are things that I believe should be in the business world as well, like poetry. Some I think don't have to be, like knitting, that can stay outside. Maybe more in the charity area, but poetry's got such powerful impact. And as we move into this world where language becomes, I guess, the way that things get done, and there's a phrase, dialogue is what gets things done. And it still is, even if that dialogue is with AI, there's still a conversation being had. And poetry is a powerful catalyst for that conversation. So that passion really does show up in everything I do: coaching, business development, business growth, leadership development, innovation. I think it is the foundational creativity for me.
You're talking to the converted here. So
I know I am. You're just agreeing with everything. No challenges here.
I know, I'm nodding my head. Yeah.
I've had a lot of challenge.
Yeah, you have. And it's taken me too long in my life to realise how much creativity is part of myself. And I think there are many out there that, for various reasons, deny their creative aspect of their souls that we all have, as you say. But we forget in our day-to-day life how creative we are, whether that's what we put on our body, clothes-wise, how we arrange the dinner on our plate, how our homes look.
It's everywhere. It's in the music we love. It's in the friends that we make. It's in the places we like to go. It's around us. Somebody asked me a question yesterday, Maxine. It might have been yesterday, the day before, but it was like, what is it that keeps driving me to do all these different things? And I say, it's fundamental to life. Life has got this constant drive for experience and change. And as a biologist by training, I forget that people maybe don't appreciate we have come through so much as a species. We've evolved to where we are today. And that evolution is something that is a creative act, a collaboration, a synergy, a joining together. I'm going to go down another niche that I'm passionate about, which is evolutionary biology. But so many people talk about Darwin without ever having really experienced evolutionary biology. Mostly it's about synergy. It's not about the survival of the fittest. It's about how we collaborate and how we do that against adversity. And it's that helps people survive fundamentally.
I learned a few years ago that Darwin the bit that people have focused on has been quite a convenient bit they've focused on for their own agenda, I think.
Yeah, to justify competition. And I'm sorry, that's a very small part. That's when things don't go to plan. That's the competition bit is when resources are scarce. It comes from a scarcity mindset, and creativity is not a scarce resource. It's actually abundant. It's something, the more you practice, the more there is of it. That was a quote from Maya Angelou, by the way. That wasn't me, but I like it.
Oh, I love Maya Angelou. Yeah, I mean, goodness. I had a friend once who said to me, cut open a lemon, see how many pips you find. There is just abundance everywhere. From one lemon, you can grow enough trees to feed how many people. And ever since that moment, you start to notice then when I'm cutting fruit, I'm thinking, oh, abundance, abundance.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. We'll just pause on the creativity bit for a second, because you mentioned you'd started off your career in a different way. So would you like to share with us a little bit of your career journey and how you landed where you are now?
Oh, so if you go right back to the many interests that a young Kate had, both loving to do drama, being in a school play, but just absolutely drawn to the science. I mean, I talk about Darwin as though he's like a school friend, because I was just fascinated by where did we come from? You know, how did we appear? And although I'd be going to Sunday school and that kind of thing, I thought that wasn't the whole story. And as a scientist, I wanted to go back to where did individual living things come from? So I studied biology and geology at university. It felt like the natural thing for me to do. I loved exploring. The thing about evolutionary biology is you can't know. It's all theoretical and it's all following this theories and these ideas. It's a very creative practice to kind of what stories fit the facts that we've got. I always wanted to be a detective when I was younger, and it felt this is a way I could put that into practice. So I enjoyed studying biology and geology, and then I got a PhD in biological sciences. So I was very, very much a scientist by training, but definitely have a poetic way of thinking. I can remember somebody saying to me when I was doing my PhD, oh, wasn't it lucky that you came across the idea that you can distinguish filmy fern gametophytes in the way that you did it? And I thought there was no luck in it. There was no luck. There was just a different way of looking at the problem. And I guess that different way of looking at the problem has been where my neurodiversity, unrecognised and undiagnosed, came in. So I always felt that, no, it wasn't lucky. I was just looking at things from a different perspective. And I think that ability to look at things from a different perspective and angle has been a theme throughout my career as well, and enjoying a challenge. So from naming new filmy fern gametophytes and having a species named after me at university.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
What were they called? Kate Flamingi fungum. I can't even say the word.
No. Hymenophyllum taylori, named after the person who originally found the species in America, a lady called Mary Taylor. And we studied the plant in Manchester. And then in brackets, my supervisor was called Don Farrar, and my name was Rain at the time. So it was Hymenophyllum taylori, Farrar and Rain in brackets.
Wow.
So a new species of plant that nobody will ever see because it lives in caves and it's very rare. It actually sounds a bit like me. Lives in caves and very rare.
Oh, you don't know if you live in caves, but...
Well, I have written a poem, actually, which is called Self-Portrait as a Cave of Bats. So I do feel some synergy with cave living. Sorry, that's my brain.
That's all right. So you started off as a biologist and a geologist as well. So you're doing both subjects together, which they obviously tie in very closely anyway.
Yeah.
And what happened after that?
So after that, I did the milk round of graduate positions and decided that the request for us to be mobile as students was something that I'm very, very stubborn, Maxine. So I think this is something when people say I'm resilient, I go, no, I'm not, I'm just very stubborn. And it's like, I don't want to be mobile, thanks. I want to stay home. I like my home comforts. And so I couldn't do a graduate programme. So I did the PhD instead, which was in my brain a logical thing to do. And then really ended up with a specialism that I didn't want to continue. It was very, very niche. Not many people studying rare filmy-fern gametophytes in the world. And I decided to go to the university careers library and read it and decide what career I did want to do. So I like libraries. I like libraries and reading. And I really enjoyed facilitating the learning in practical sessions. I've written a poem about that, which talks about all my first jobs and helping students refocus the microscope on the thing they're meant to be looking at and not the bubbles, because that's very confusing. Bubbles do look like things on a slide. So I'd go around and help them. And I loved the training and decided I wanted to work in whichever profession would allow me to do training and development, and found out at the time that was called human resources, which I thought, was it people management at the time? It could have been people management. And decided that I needed to retrain so that I could do this, because I tried to apply for a few jobs, but nobody would have me because I had no experience, apparently, and no qualifications. And I thought, no, but I've got great enthusiasm. And that wasn't enough. So I got the qualifications, kept the enthusiasm, and got some experience by working with Bury College as their staff development administrator while I was writing up the PhD. So I moved then into the world of HR, as it's now become known, and hopefully will change its name again soon to something a little bit more human-centric.
Yeah, even the term people management made me go a bit funny.
Yeah, it's really difficult because, I don't think marketing have a brand problem. It's clearly marketing is what it is. Yes, they've changed some of the focus over the years, but people management, training and development, human resources, nobody loves the name of this functional discipline. Probably needs a different name.
Yeah, it does.
Said the poet.
Yeah, said the poet. I know. So my mind's thinking, what could you call it though? So it's not an easy answer. I'm sure someone will come up with something one day. So the world of HR obviously is very people focused, as in coaching.
Yeah.
But my experience of HR, and I worked in the NHS and organisations like that, I found it quite tricky. I found them very professional. Is that the right word? Very professional, but not always feeling very human. And I just wonder what your experience of that was.
Well, my experience when I trained was I was told to keep emotions out of HR and out of the workplace. And with some regret now, as I look back, I can remember times when I would use this phrase, let's keep the emotions out of it. And the more I've learned, I would never say that now. It'd be like, okay, what are the emotions telling us about this situation? And that's maybe a coaching question that I've learned, but absolutely, emotions were never to be brought into the workplace. And sadly, some people still think this is the case. I think that's where they are missing a huge opportunity, but we'll come back to that. So yes, there was this professionalism, and you were meant to wear a suit and tie your hair back and not wear cardigans. I was once told, if I wanted to progress my career. Actually, I was meant to have short hair if I was meant to progress my career, but I thought, I'm not doing that. Yes, look at
my goodness.
I know.
I'm pulling faces here. That's what Kate's responding to.
Yeah. This was all the careers advice I got when I was early in my HR career. There was another one as well. One of my managers once said to me, "Oh, Kate, you're very good at fielding a dropped ball." And that was a really interesting phrase because I quite like my sports as well. And I thought, well, I know in cricket that fielding's pretty important. So the fact that I drop the ball isn't the issue. It's the fact that I know where to throw it and how to get things back on track. And that, again, was a bit of the story of my HR career, because I go into places with my different way of seeing things. And I guess I felt I was fielding a lot of drop balls and they weren't mine. Managers drop a lot of balls.
They do.
Let's carry on that metaphor. It might not serve as well as we carry on. And I would pick up those drop balls and try and find a way to help managers get better at what they were doing so that they didn't drop these balls in future. And for me, there was a real passion to do that. There was always a developmental angle in HR. People will say sometimes, we're too busy, but actually you're probably too busy because you're being reactive, not being proactive. So if you can just increment the learning back a little bit, what was the trigger? Why did they finally come and speak to you? Oh, it's because there was a tribunal pending. Okay, so what's the next step before that? Okay, the person is really aggressive and they can't resolve. Okay, so maybe a grievance or some kind of a conversation before. So what's the step before that? And I just increment back the learning because you can't teach people until they've had an experience that they need to learn from. So I'd always have in my mind, what is the readiness of this person for this type of training and learning? And readiness has been such an important principle for me in my career and supporting others in theirs. It's like, well, what are they ready for? And how can we improve their readiness for the next step or the next stage? You don't have to get there 100% in one go. So that was kind of early in my career. How can we make the HR function more proactive with the resources we've got? And plus, where can I find other resources? So I was very good at finding people who were bored in their job, who wanted to do something a little bit different, and having them help me do something that was interesting as a project. So in HR, you're not blessed with a huge budget or resources, but you do have the opportunity to influence and create interesting work for people. And that's what I used to like doing.
Listening to you is just making me think, because I relate to some of those ways of thinking. Even when I was a nurse and I was dealing with an unhappy relative or whatever, I'd be asking those questions, what's really going on? What happened just before this? And they used to call me in as the pacifier. They used to call me, but I think I just went in with curiosity and openness. And it makes me think that a lot of us that end up being coaches were sort of already coaches.
Yeah.
But I'm also wondering for you, how much do you think having that kind of neurodiverse way of thinking plays into just that curiosity and thinking in a different way?
It used to give me a sense of real frustration. I used to be so frustrated that nobody else could see what I was seeing. And I'd feel like, was I mad or were they mad? I couldn't work it out. One of us is not sane here. That was my old way of thinking and experiencing. And so that frustration, I carried it with me. It's not healthy. I used to get quite burnt out in the workplace from this kind of thinking and rethinking. It's almost like I'd have to translate what I was thinking into words that other people would understand. And so I felt a huge amount of double processing all the time, at least double processing. So I'd have a thought. I'd realise it wouldn't be one that other people would understand. I'd have to think, okay, how will they understand it? So I'd have to translate it into business speak, and then I'd have to listen to what they say, not take it personally because it usually wasn't very positive, and then translate it into, so what does that mean I need to do?
Gosh, exhausting.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't realise how exhausting it was. Probably my husband did, because he'd see me come home from work and kind of fall asleep. I'd have migraines quite a lot of the time. I just put that down to working really hard. And I think I've said before, I also used writing workshops as a way of wellbeing and recovery for me. So I always kept the poetry and the writing there as a sort of way to recover from the workplace, not a way to enjoy it. Now I'm talking about some negative, really hard times, but I guess I learned from that. And without the language of neurodiversity, I wasn't able to say what was going on for me. I did things like a Myers-Briggs personality workshop, and I know that Myers-Briggs has its advocates and its detractors, but for me it gave me the language that worked for my brain, and I didn't need to know and understand neurodiversity. I could say, I'm an introverted person. I get my energy from reflection and concentration. I am innovative. I see the bigger picture and I like to join the dots up. I'm a feelings first person. I feel things incredibly deeply, so I'm highly sensitive. And I'm an emergent planner, so I don't have a plan step by step. I'll do whatever happens in the moment, hence that readiness principle that really worked for me. So I've just said I'm an INFP, I don't mind sharing that, and that is an unusual type in the Western world. So I was forever translating how I experienced the world of work. But I think that made me more creative as well. It gave me more options. I'd often go into the workplace when there'd been a huge challenge, or I'd join organisations that were trying to do things that other people thought was impossible, and just kind of really see a way through that using the principle of readiness, being a feelings first thinker, and then able to rationalise that into what's the next step. That's why I called my business Next Step HR, because I'm able to do that in the moment. Good in a crisis. That's what they say, don't they?
Yes. My experience, I worked a lot with young people with autism. And one of the things I loved about that was the refreshing honesty, the focus. So all the fluff wasn't there, the small talk, waffle kind of things that some of us will do. So always knew where I stood. I mean, that can obviously turn into obsessive behaviour as well and things like that. But that directness and that honesty and almost simplicity, and this is the thing.
It's clarity, isn't it?
Yeah, clarity, that's the word.
I think there's a real clarity. It gets misunderstood in organisations as rudeness and directness. And for me, it's actually, you know where you stand now, and you have a choice how you react to that. Yes, your emotions are yours. I mean, that's what I say. I'm emotions, feelings, first person. I didn't deal with them very well when I was younger, and I had to work with myself to kind of have good ways to express emotions, which is where the writing poetry came from, I think, originally. So emotions aren't in and of themselves bad, but what you do with them is, or has the potential to cause good or cause harm. And I say that to a lot of people, you know, you have a choice. That emotion of anger, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to use it to change the situation for the better for everyone? Or are you going to use it to find blame and not actually own?
Just avoid.
Yeah. So emotions are there to help us decide how to be more human, really. So definitely don't ignore them in the workplace. Welcome them in. That's my new version. And the best way to welcome them in is through poetry, isn't it?
And to be honest, even those people that say don't bring emotion into the room are bringing an emotion into the room because they're saying, we're afraid of emotions. We don't want emotions. It gets in our way. And I'm feeling quite passionate about that. So don't bring it in the room. You cannot be a human and not have a feeling, whether it's a dysfunctional feeling, a healthy feeling, it's a feeling. You know, like a belief is a feeling as well. And it's a filter through which you are living in the world. And so it's not honest in a way to say don't bring emotion in the room when you're bringing in an emotion in the room by even saying that statement.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think we do a million things to squash emotions in this world, don't we? Distract, we eat, we drink, we smoke, whatever the thing is that we do. And yet it is the thing that really is our humanity. I think because it's a hard thing for people to study and we keep trying to put it in boxes in some way, we do struggle with it and we feel afraid of it.
I think the humanities are currently undervalued. Again, the optimist in me would see that in the future, if some of the transactional parts of a curriculum are being done in different ways with AI, then we might value the humanities more because they are the lessons we need to learn to build our emotional literacy. It isn't something that is taught in schools yet. It's kind of an optional extra if you do drama. Like I said, I loved doing drama at school, but it wasn't something that I was able to do as a curriculum activity because my school didn't do it. So I had to do it afterwards, in between. As a scientist, there wasn't much in between. There was a lot of heavy lifting to do in science A-levels and degree. So I didn't get much space to do the stuff that is creative and wonderful, but I had to do it, being this highly sensitive person. So it would always call to me to do something. It still hasn't stopped calling to me now.
Do you think with coaching coming into business and creativity coming into business, that it is changing? Certainly from some of the podcasts that we've done recently, like on human-centric leadership, there's a shift, isn't there?
Yeah, I was really pleased because, you know, those conversations we had with the guests really showed me that there is hope in leadership, that creativity and emotions are being better understood. The works of people like Brené Brown, Ludmila Preslova, open up the opportunity to explore and incorporate them in coaching and in the workplace, in organisational change. And to be honest, Maxine, we need this understanding now because the world is scarier and more uncertain than it was maybe 5 or 10 years ago. You know, post-pandemic, there's a real trauma that people are experiencing. And go back to creativity and poetry, we know that these are practices that give people hope, that help people express how they're feeling. And so there's a real need to combine creativity with coaching and with leadership now. It's important that they aren't seen as somehow separate disciplines like the curriculum would do in education systems. They now need to come together at some point, and if not in the workplace, if not in people's leadership practice, then I'm not sure where, but it's really definitely needed. I'm not sure I answered your question, but I hope that.
You did answer my question, and a word popped into my head as well with the poetry was this word tenderness. And I'm not sure why. I think from my experience of poetry, and like you, I've used it very cathartically and to help me process things. In the sharing of poetry, every workshop I've taken part in, there's a tenderness that comes in for each other, a compassion. So it brings in a softness in a very harsh world. And that, for me, somehow feels an important quality to bring in. Softness isn't a weakness. I want to differentiate.
No, and I think I would actually use the word appreciation. Appreciative words are some of the most powerful words you can ever use or express. So when we appreciate the strength of somebody else or the value that someone else has created, that is such a powerful thing to do. And learning how to appreciate others is not a soft skill. It's a difficult thing to do because it means you need to be vulnerable. And it's something that I think you are able to experience when you're in a certain kind of poetry workshop that lets people share what they've just written and hears it with appreciation. I think it's a different world when you bring more appreciative inquiry, which is a discipline that I like, than using a sort of problem-solving agenda or a critiquing agenda. And at some point, it's important to do both, but appreciation, in my mind, needs to come before the criticism. It always does.
That's a lovely term. I'm going to fumble over the saying the word clearly. Appreciative inquiry. That's a lovely term to use.
Well, it comes from appreciative inquiry. It's got principles, and you'll not be surprised why I like it. There's the constructionist principle. Words create worlds. So what we say really matters. The poetic principle. What we focus on grows. So those are two things that are absolutely in my coaching practice and in my poetry practice.
We haven't really got to that part of the story. When did you officially become a coach or decide to do coaching and become self-employed as well?
The story goes, I was doing a course. I think it was something about coaching skills for line managers. And it was when I worked for a company called Schlumberger. And I guess they were somewhat ahead of their time because I think it was about 20 years ago. I was on that training course and thought, I really enjoy this. This is what I want to do. And like I say, I wanted to do it, but I didn't get around to doing the course and finishing it until 2021, I think it was. And I did the ILM level 7. I had so many things calling for my attention at the time. I got a family, 2 children. I was the sole breadwinner. I was in senior leadership roles, and it felt somewhat selfish if I'd have been doing sort of a coaching training at the same time. I couldn't see how to fit all of that in. And so I waited until I'd left one of my corporate roles and decided I'll start my coaching training. That was in 2016, but I didn't finish it until, like I say, 2021 because there were family difficulties. My daughter, she said, I can share this. She had an eating disorder. And that took all of my time and attention to work out how to support her, how to keep the family earning. We sort of split the responsibilities, myself and my husband. He went back to work after being a house husband for 20 years. So he went through some challenging times. So my coaching qualification took a back seat. And then I left my last corporate role and I'd still not finished my qualification. I was so determined I was going to get that and do it for myself. My daughter had recovered enough to be considered well, and it was now time for me to put myself back at the centre of my life, which was the belief and the mantra and the phrase that I was using, to put myself at the centre of my life. And that coaching qualification was the most essential thing to help me do that. And I think of all the qualifications that I've got, and I was a serial qualification collector for a time. I thought the next course would solve all my problems. Actually, I was so proud when I got my coaching qualification. It meant so much to me. So that was in 2021, and it was then that I really focused on, as I say, all things development. And I really lent into my business being about coaching and development. So for that might be team coaching or team development. So that's how coaching became really important, from experiencing it, an awareness raising course some 2 decades ago. Yeah, a long time, to actually getting my qualification and being very proud of something I'd achieved.
Though to some degree, as I said before, it sounds like you were having those coaching questions already, when you were working.
Always. I mean, I was always very curious. I mean, for somebody who kind of wanted to know where we all came from as a human species, I couldn't go into the workplace and switch that curiosity off. And I think the first or second day that I ever was in HR, somebody came in to a consultation meeting and they weren't very happy. And apparently the trade union rep said I shouldn't have let them get so angry and shout at me and I should discipline them for it. And I'm like, but I've been here 2 days. I'm pretty sure it wasn't something I did. So I'm going to keep the curiosity and understand what's really going on. And I never lost that curiosity in the workplace. It was always there.
Yeah, curiosity is a magical quality. It's something we're born with, again, like creativity, isn't it? Children are very young children. You see them, they're picking up everything off the ground. They want to know what the worm tastes like, or, whatever it is.
We turn it off, though. We turn it off when we are too busy, because we're programmed to make quick decisions when we've experienced a few patterns. If we don't have to consciously think about it, we don't use too much energy, and therefore we can make quicker decisions. But those quicker decisions aren't always better. And actually, I think this is another reason I always found that I got burnt out in organisations, is because I couldn't make decisions based off common sense, because the way I would do something was not the common way to do it. So I would always have to not second guess, but work out the way I would do it, the way someone else would do it, and find a way in between it.
I think as well, we're not all designed to be that quick. I've got a son with Down syndrome and he's got serious processing issues. And I constantly have to educate his support workers on, you're saying too much too fast. He's only caught the first sentence. You need to slow down. You need to give him 5 minutes or half an hour, whatever long it takes to give you an answer.
Yeah.
That's taught me quite a lot, knowing an individual like that. So sometimes I'm on the phone with him and I ask him a question, then there's silence for 10 minutes, or he's off talking to himself to work it out, and then we come back. So I just carry on reading my book or whatever. So we're sitting in a peaceful kind of quiet time, but he's busy working in his head or self-talking, and I'm just waiting without any pressure on him to give me an answer, and then we get the right answer.
Yeah. As an introvert, I think the ability to sit in silence has got such an honouring of the other person, and it does sadden me that we feel we have to fill the spaces with sound or words, because silence can actually be just exactly what's needed in the moment. And I know that when I get the chance to sit with people and we don't talk, it can still feel just as connected as when we do.
Yeah. And I had an interesting exchange on LinkedIn today about AI, and this person was wondering if AI has some role in getting people started on their growth journey, by asking good questions, etc. But I said what it can't do is be silent, because I don't know if you've ever interacted with AI, but it just keeps coming back with questions. I feel like my son, stop asking me questions, just give me a minute to think. I've had an interesting exchange with AI on that point, which I might publish. And also presence. I said you cannot replace the feeling of a person who is just there with you.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, I did a series of workshops using poetry called Connect and Reflect, because I felt this separation and need to connect. I did a series of 8 workshops based on resilience. And there was one about, actually it was before I did the resilience workshop, there was something about human touch and the science behind human touch, that it has benefits to our well-being. It's not a surprise. We are a collaborative and cooperative species, and attachment is formed by touch. Well, any kind of touch, if you are not human. I was thinking of apes because that, I think, was the study was done on them. So scientifically, touch is really important, and that connection is really important. And it was when I was doing this curious research when the pandemic was happening, how we were separate and distant and we couldn't touch and we couldn't be with people. And I went down this path, and that helped me create these workshops that helped me and helped my friends. And I think that was me coming back to what I love, was poetry. And that started me on the path to include poetry in my business, actually, at that point. So that human touch is really important.
That's the beautiful thing about crises, the root meaning of the word being opportunity.
Yeah.
You're in the middle of a pandemic and you created something that has brought you here. And I took part in, because you set up last year the Poetry and Business Conference.
That's right.
And you're gathering a group of business poets around you, aren't you?
I am.
You presented a 5-day challenge on LinkedIn recently, which I took part in and thoroughly enjoyed and found it hugely inspiring, reconnected with myself a bit again. And one of the things that you shared, if you don't mind me mentioning, was this letter that you wrote to yourself for 5 years' time, didn't you? Do you want to share a little bit about that and where you are with that?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Oh gosh. I get so excited about things, and I decided I needed to write a job description for a business poet, and I actually wrote it as a sort of manifesto for change. And one of the 5-day challenge that you were on, Maxine, we called it Finding Your Poetry in Business. Because some people think that poetry is about writing a poem. And yes, you would be right. That is fundamental to poetry. But to be poetic is to find your flow and something that you love. Now, that doesn't have to mean that you write a poem. That can be you just operating in all the elements that you are energized by. And so what we wanted to do is help people find their poetry in business, so find the things they love, find the beauty, find the truth. And then the final session, I think, was this Create Your Manifesto, wasn't it? And I shared my manifesto that I'd forgotten I'd written, because I do that. Being neurodivergent, I'll have these surges of excitement and activity, and I'll go away and do something and create something, and then it'll pass and I'll forget that I've done it. But yes, I created a manifesto for change for business poets, and I'm just wondering if I can find it, actually. Would you like me to share some of it?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. My manifesto for change. I've challenged my future self with a vision of what could be, and this is what my poetic eye sees. My future self has created a new shelf in the local library of crossover literature, books that link business success with creativity, because together we are better with art. My future self runs an agency for poets and matches businesses' need for creativity to poets who inspire their future innovation strategy. Toxic cultures are neutralized and reimagined with the healing verses of the spoken word artists. My future self has found the poetry in business, and the business in poetry is redefined. It's not about being published, but seeing and being through a poetic mind. Organisations everywhere employ a poet to keep their human spirits thriving, and poets are finally valued for their art. My future self smiles appreciatively because we no longer give away our creativity for free, and people finally know what words are worth.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was the one. Was that the one?
That was the one, I know. And you then wanted us to all write our own manifesto. What was amazing was that it's not just words that has and is becoming reality. You have and are creating everything that you've written books, haven't you?
Yeah.
You've done, so talking of library as well. So you've done all those things.
I have. In 2024, I published a book called Neurodiversity Poetry Writing Prompts, 30 of them, 30 neurodiversity poetry writing prompts, because I was exploring my own neurodiversity, and the way I explore things is through words. I'm aphantasic. I don't make images in my mind's eye, so everything is conceptual. This is how I started to realise, that little PhD student, this was the way my brain was working. So concepts were obvious to me. And I explored my own neurodiversity in something called National Poetry Writing Month. And I created a single, simple prompt to spark my creative, poetic reflection. And this little pocket book is a combination of poetry, neurodiversity, and coaching, because there's a space for people to write their own reflections in here and do their own thinking at the same time. So that is probably the book that I love the most because it's so cute. It's really pocketbook. And then I was in a collaborative group on LinkedIn. Ross Nichols put a call out for creatives who were writing poetry, who were also coaches, counsellors and therapists. And the Creative Coaching Collective made this book, Poetry for Coaching, Transformation Through Verse, which gives you the poem and the story together, which is really powerful. And then the other one was my own collection of poetry called Unbroken. Un/broken. That slash is really important. You don't hear it when you say it out loud. It's a nod to the hidden disability that is neurodiversity, and the fact that many people are neurodivergent describe themselves as feeling broken, and that the most beautiful art of kintsugi is about healing the brokenness with golden glue. And so the title itself kind of is a nod to this idea of we're all unbroken. We're all made by the challenges that we experience and the way we kind of put ourselves back together. That's the 3 books that I published in 2024.
And that's what you've done, isn't it? You've put the gold in to all the pieces of you that, for years where you didn't understand about your own neurodiversity, where other people certainly didn't, and all your different life struggles. And now you did that manifesto, and then here we are 5 years on or 4 years on or whatever it is from that, where you've literally filled it in with gold and you're bringing together people. You inspire me hugely. You work really hard as well, I might want to add. I mean, at the moment, you're preparing for your second Poetry and Business conference. And you did say before this, didn't you, that you're feeling a bit tired?
I'm a little bit. I am. I'm saying to people, I never feel like I'm doing enough. And it's a really difficult space to be, because I think having lived a life where what I didn't feel like it was ever enough, it is a driver. What I have to learn to do is accept what I'm doing is having an impact and recognise that and celebrate that. So this podcast is allowing me to do that, Maxine. Thank you. And the second Poetry and Business conference is coming up in 2 weeks' time. And I'm very excited for the fact that another thing that I want to have happen is starting to happen. And that is that somebody who identifies as a poet and recognises they have this talent to notice the meanings, the beauty and the truth in life, that we're creating career paths for poets. Because the reason I ended up doing science wasn't because I wanted to be employed as a scientist, because I never did have an employed job as a scientist. It was because I couldn't see a career path for the skills and talents that I wanted to bring to the world. And that was poetry, storytelling, creativity. There wasn't anything out there. And so that seemed like it would take me out of the poverty that I experienced as a child. So I needed to have something that was more stable in my future. And it felt like science was just easier and more predictable as a career path. So I chose that and then ended up doing something different again anyway. So I did HR.
But I think many people will feel like that, including myself, where they've done that. They've gone into a career that seems sensible, responsible, blah, blah, blah. But it
slowly eats away at your soul. And I used to say, it sucks your soul dry. If you're feeling there is no soul in work, that's the other thing I'm trying to resolve, which is we have a choice. Work doesn't have to be soul destroying. I used to put poems up in the lift at work on the backs of toilet doors. It's like you can bring these beautiful moments into the workplace if you want to. There are others who are doing that as well. And I thought, okay, let's showcase this to business. Poetry has a place in business. It has a place in organisations and in the environment. And when we do experience it, either hearing it or reading it, seeing it like on the tube or in a construction site, that's something that one of the poets at the last conference, that's one of the projects he has his poems in unusual places. And let's not be too dramatic, but poetry does help people with wellbeing. It helps save lives, actually. Sometimes that word just at that moment can lift people out of a darkness they didn't think was going to end. And I hope that more people find their way back to poetry and that poetry becomes accessible to more people through the workplace, because I think it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. I mean, I, as you know, totally with you on that. I think poetry has probably saved my life, to be frank. And I mean that in a real way.
Yeah.
I've worked a lot with young people and I think it's a powerful medium for them. And I have this philosophy of everyone's a poet. When I did teaching for a while, I took that into the classroom. And my son wrote a poem, a 9-word poem, and he's got Down syndrome. And if he can do it, we all can, because we've all got something to say. Even those that are non-verbal, they've still got something to say. And there's different ways of doing that. And for me, it can be through art or it can be through poetry. And I mean art, not in a, you have to be Picasso. I mean, just paint on paper with your fingers, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's get the feeling out, the thing you want to say out. And I think that sort of connection we had in that 5-day challenge and seeing the connection that it brings, as you say, and the appreciation of each other as humans and the sharing of some of the vulnerable bits about ourselves. And then sitting down and realising, yeah, we're all human, even the people that we might struggle to see, that the leaders in the world at the moment, some of them. But I think it's hard to explain unless you're in it. But for those that are a little bit sceptical, because poetry might seem sort of fluffy or even pretentious for some people, their education and poetry has been very pretentious. What would you say to those who've had a negative experience from school or education on poetry?
I'd say think about the songs and the lyrics of songs that you've heard that stay in your mind, because that to me is poetry as well. The phrases, the rhythm and the rhyme of spoken word is so much different than reading something on a page and pulling it to pieces to show that you understand it in an exam. Actually appreciating the beauty and truth in the world around you is poetic. So I would say to people, you've probably not found your poetry yet, because at school you're given a small menu to choose from. Go and experience different forms of poetry. Go to open mics. There are loads of them out there. I know that some of the people in the neurodivergent space, they don't like poetry, and I say, what about spoken word? And they go, oh yes, I like spoken word.
Which is poetry.
Which is poetry.
A rap song is poetry.
Exactly. So I am incredibly inclusive. When I talk about poetry, it's not the written stuff on the page. Honestly, I love it all, because if poetry evokes an emotion in me and it's one that I don't like that, then it's done its job. It's evoked an emotion in me. And why didn't I like it? And what do I know about myself now? Coaching questions. Why didn't I like that? What do I know about myself now that I didn't before I read that? Oh, well, I know I don't like, I'm trying to think of some poetry I don't like. If it's too visual imagery rich, because I am aphantasic, I'm lost. It's like, it's just noise. So if you have poems that are about nature, that talk about flowers and trees and all that, I'm like, yeah, I'm a biologist. I know there's flowers and trees in nature. I can't picture them.
Some of the romantic poets might be a bit difficult, potentially, some of them, but I don't know. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Possibly. But quite often there's more to it. Poems that evoke an emotion. And I think that's the thing. I think poetry has to have, for me, an emotional connection. I love it even more when it has sound in it, which sounds ridiculous, but words that are sound words, onomatopoeia, that kind of, the cat sat on the mat, the rhythm, the sort of, it sounds interesting. And I think the joy of that kind of spoken word poetry, it just never fails to connect with me. And this is what I want to bring more to organisations. Well-chosen words that inspire and lift and move people. And I think that's what all leaders are trying to do with their words, aren't they, really?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure some of them have been inspired by other people's words. I think it's a lot more there than what we realise. We've all listened to famous people that have spoken words, whether that's Nelson Mandela or Maya Angelou, whoever. We've heard it somewhere. And totally agree with you. And I think poetry is a door opener for people to say the unspoken.
Yeah.
To some degrees. And it's got a lot of potential, and I'm struggling to say more because I can feel there's even a lot more than what you've said is potentially there with what we could do with it. That's how I feel, and where we could take it. So it's really exciting, and I'm really glad to have you to talk about it today.
If we can help people find the words, that's the next step that I feel that I'm on. So after the Poetry and Business Conference, it's about taking this community of business poets and showing others the career path and the way that they can do what some of us are doing now, which is bringing this value into organisations and helping organisations connect, get their messages out there, improve their leadership. So yeah, we're working on that, Maxine.
And then from that thing, I would love to take that information into a school's career talk.
Yeah.
Because when I worked in schools, the career options were very narrow. And I used to spend a lot of time, like you, down the library researching all these quirky careers to show the kids that, look, you can do this.
There are so many other things, yeah. We talked about having a conversation with AI. I love to speak to AI, basically to tell it it's wrong. Because it is. Well, it is. It's a amalgamation of the world as it is at the moment, not as it could be. So I asked it, what were the career paths for poets? And it's a notoriously difficult profession. It didn't even call it that. It's a notoriously difficult thing to make money as a poet. here are the ways you can do it. You can win competitions, you can get published, and I'm thinking, that takes forever. Have you ever tried to do that? Yeah. So I said, well, what if you're wrong? ChatGPT or Claude, I can't remember who it was I was asking. What if you're wrong and there's incredible value in poetry and it just has not yet been materialised and monetised and made accessible? I said, oh, well, in that case, it's a market failure. And I'm thinking, okay, so if it's a market failure, that's something I can sort out. We just have to create a marketplace for poetry and business. And that's what I think I'm doing with people across the world who also see the value of poetry and business.
Or maybe the answer in that is maybe we need to change the way we do business a bit as well, and the way we run the economy and all those kind of things.
That could be the step after. That could be the step after this one, but I might not be here for that one.
Yeah. I must say, this conversation has not followed my normal format for these conversations where I have all these little questions down about what your biggest challenge is, what do you love most, and all that kind of thing. And what's your week like even? I haven't asked you. I mean, you can answer that one. We've got a little bit of time before we go, but I think you've already talked about some of your triumphs and some of your challenges anyway throughout the conversation. So your busy week with all these different hats you wear.
I wear lots of hats, yes.
Which is a very purposeful metaphor because you are the lady of hats, aren't you?
This is true.
There's some great photos of you around with some spectacular hats.
The hats give me confidence to poet. I was taught that when you're networking, you need to be memorable. And I thought, well, poetry's memorable and hats are memorable. So I wore my red hat when I went networking and talked about poetry. And when I performed poetry, I'd wear a hat because it gave me that confidence. And the hats have stuck. And I've just loved them anyway. So I buy more now.
You've got one or two, I think.
Yeah, lots. What's a typical week like? So fundamentally, I'm a coach. So I have probably at any one time about 30 coaching clients, and more often than not now the focus is on neurodiversity coaching and career coaching. So with an executive career, I'm able to help people with their leadership and career challenges, and with neurodiversity help them identify strategies that work for them. So coaching has probably been 2/3 of my business. It's probably now going to be more about 60% or something. It's kind of dropping down a bit because the poetry in business is starting to take off, in that I do spoken word finale. So I'll go along to an event. The most recent one was the Poverty Truth Commission in Sheffield. They held their closing event, having run a year's programme of identifying the root causes of poverty in Sheffield, and their community commissioners and civic commissioners were feeding back what the next steps of that programme were going to be. And that's something really close to my heart, Maxine. I grew up in South Yorkshire, and I was one of those children who would have been identified as growing up in poverty. And I know what it feels like to not be seen or heard and not be understood. It was such an honour to be able to go and summarise the work that they're doing with spontaneous spoken word. When I've done that, I give them the words afterwards because they are their words, not mine. It's found poetry, if you like. I found it in the words that they've said. And it honours the people who've done the work. You know, I feel like I'm there to reflect back the wonderful nature that are humans when they're doing really incredible work. And so that's more of the type of work that I'm doing now, which is finding the beauty and truth in organisations through the spoken word finale, poetry consultations, the Poetry and Business Conference, and leadership development. I sometimes do that and use poetry exercises in that. So that's my working week. I do webinars around neurodiversity, which use poetry to help people connect with their unique brains and ways of thinking. Because like you just said, everybody's a poet, they just don't know it yet.
And just to add, you didn't go and have an official diagnosis, did you? I think that's what a lot of people need to realise, is that you found out, you worked it out yourself, I guess, did you?
Yeah, so what happened was my daughter was curious to understand how she'd ended up having an eating disorder, and quite often eating disorders go alongside neurodiversity, and she worked that out for herself. And then she sent me loads and loads of TikToks and said, and I was like, why did you keep sending me these? And she said, Mum, this is me, and I think this is you as well. And I guess when your daughter is sharing that with you, that insight, and they know you as well as you know them, and you think, I guess I'm going to listen to this. And then I started to put lots of pieces of the puzzle together, and that included lots of people that I was coaching were getting diagnoses. I was attracting people to my coaching practice, and it resonated with me, the challenges they were having. And I trained myself on neurodiversity awareness, so I made an effort, as I always do when I'm coaching. If something will help my clients, I need to educate myself and keep myself up to date. I realised as I was doing that these traits and characteristics help make sense of my career ups and downs, of which there have been many. And so, yes, I am self-diagnosed, and then I asked in the family, has anyone else in our family got diagnoses? And I found out that yes, there were some who had already, and they are conditions that are genetic. So it kind of just made sense to me. I didn't need to get the diagnosis. I don't have to prove to an employer, thankfully, which is sad that many of my clients feel that they have to go through this whole process to get the right to being treated with dignity and respect in the workplace, which really, HR people, you should be creating an environment already where people feel that way. Just a call out to my professional body there. That's what I think is our responsibility.
If you want to understand that a bit more, I really think listening to your Neurodiversity in the Workplace podcast series will help. It will clarify a bit more detail about what you've just said. It really gives us some really clear examples of it being done and how it's being done, and the huge benefits as well for everybody concerned. So we'll put all the links to your books and to that series in the show notes as well. And the conference will be over by the time this comes out, unfortunately. But I'm sure it won't be the last one, but you'll have to wait and see when the next one is. But I'm sure if people connect with you on LinkedIn, they'll be able to keep up to date.
Absolutely. I've set the date for the next one. I've made it really memorable. It's Friday the 13th of November. That's 2026.
Wow. Okay, great.
Now, I'm ahead of myself, and I've already got excited that in that conference, particularly, I'm going to pick up again on this theme of neurodiversity because, again, as I'm exploring this and more curious about this, the science of the brain, it becomes clear to me that there's a poetic side to the brain which is attuned to rhythm and meaning making and metaphor, and that there is something, an emerging discipline called poetic intelligence. So how do you develop your poetic intelligence in a world of artificial intelligence? And to me, that's right in my sweet spot, my niche. So yeah, watch this space. There's people working on this at the moment. So I'd love to showcase that again at the conference next year. And if any of this sounds of interest to people, connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to have conversations with people about poetry and business or any of the things that we've talked about today.
And there's some other things coming this year as well, but we'll keep them for people to find out if they connect with you on LinkedIn. Yeah, because they're not quite in the state to be made public yet, but there'll be other things coming. Yeah. And this is what I think, when you go back to that manifesto that you wrote and the struggles of your work life that you had up and down in HR and all that. And you're a very great example of how much once you really start to make yourself the centre of your life, not in a selfish way, but more in a deep, nourishing way, and then follow the things that you're passionate about. What can grow from that? The ripple effects of connecting with your passion and being true to yourself. You're a fantastic example of that, I think.
I don't know what to say to that, Maxine. I'm lost for words. Thank you.
And I'm really honoured to have you as a guest. And actually, I feel like I could talk to you for another hour. Thank you so much. Such a lot in there. I think a lot of people have come from coaching on a higgledy-piggledy career path or from very different professions and in all sorts of ways. So it's always fascinating to me to hear how some of the pain of that previous career becomes your purpose often as well, or different things in your life,
Yeah.
Each person in these conversations has brought their struggles and turned it into purpose. Before we finish, I'd like you to give the opportunity to either give some final tips to people or potentially even through a poem if you wanted to.
You said to be purposeful. My purpose is inspiring true connection. I want to read the poem Unbroken, which comes from a poetry collection, so it's the title poem. A million words shared bound us. A few ill-chosen words broke us apart. But a friendship as precious as ours is a kintsugi vase, all the more special for the careful reconstruction and the golden glue of forgiveness that binds and blunts the sharpest shards. So we can always forgive and rebuild and recreate beauty in the world that isn't perfect anyway.
Agree. Thank you. We shall hold that little piece of wisdom and say goodbye and thank you very much, Kate.
Thanks, Maxine. It's a pleasure.
Since this podcast was recorded, Kate Jenkinson has launched a new membership organisation called the Association of Business Poets. This is a membership body for those who are using poetry in their business, taking it to individuals, businesses or organisations in a way to create impact and change and growth and connection. We will add a link to the website for that organisation in the show notes, and also check out the Association of Business Poets LinkedIn page as well. Thank you for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. For over 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations and society. To find out more about the AC and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or visit our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. Explore our digital learning hub and enjoy our extensive library of on-demand webinars, signature programs, member benefits, interviews, podcasts, and a portfolio of live events featuring thought leadership, tools, models, and the latest industry trends to help you develop your coaching expertise.